What if the man everyone thought would self-destruct became one of the most enduring legends in music history? Ozzy Osbourne wasn't supposed to last. Fired, addicted, unpredictable, he looked like another rock star headed for an early end. But instead, his story took a turn nobody saw coming. From the dark streets of Birmingham to global superstardom, from shocking controversies to emotional comebacks, Ozzy didn't just survive rock and roll, he defined it. And the truth is, behind the madness, the headlines, and the myths, there's a story far more powerful than anyone expected. It all started in a place that didn't exactly scream rock legend. Birmingham, England. Industrial. Rough. Grey skies, factory smoke, and a working-class life that felt more like survival than opportunity. That's where John Michael Osbourne grew up. Not Ozzy yet. Just a kid trying to find his place in a world that didn't seem built for him. School wasn't his thing. In fact, it was the opposite. He struggled with dyslexia, couldn't keep up, and was often labeled as slow or difficult. Teachers didn't see potential. They saw a problem. And when you're told that enough times, you start to believe it. So Ozzy drifted. Small jobs. Trouble. Even a short stint in jail after a failed burglary. Yeah, that's how far things had slipped. But here's where everything changes. Music. Not just listening to it, but feeling it. When Ozzy heard bands like the Beatles, something clicked. For the first time, he saw a way out. A different life. Not factories. Not dead ends. Something bigger. And then came the moment that changed everything. He met Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward. Four guys from the same kind of background, all searching for something more. They didn't look like rock stars. They didn't act like rock stars. But they had something raw. Something real. They formed a band. At first, it was called Earth. But then they noticed something strange. When they played darker, heavier sounds, people paid attention. Audiences weren't just listening, they were reacting. Almost like they were drawn to it. So they leaned into it. And just like that, Black Sabbath was born. Nobody knew it at the time, but this wasn't just another band forming in England. This was the beginning of something entirely new. Something heavier. Something darker. Something that would change music forever. And at the center of it all was Ozzy. The kid who couldn't fit in. The kid nobody believed in. Becoming the voice of a generation that didn't feel like it belonged. When Black Sabbath released their first album in 1970, it didn't sound like anything else out there. Not even close. While other bands were still riding the wave of peace and love, Sabbath came in with thunder. Dark, slow, heavy riffs. Lyrics about war, fear, and the unknown. It wasn't just music, it felt like a warning. And Ozzy's voice, that was the key. It wasn't polished. It wasn't technically perfect. But it had something you couldn't fake. A haunting, almost eerie quality that made every word hit harder. When he sang, it didn't feel like a performance. It felt real. Like he meant every note. Songs like Black Sabbath, Iron Man, and War Pigs didn't just become hits, they became statements. They spoke to a generation dealing with Vietnam, political tension, and a growing sense that the world wasn't as safe as it once seemed. Critics hated it at first. They called it noise. Said it was too dark. Too heavy. Too strange. But fans, they couldn't get enough. Because for the first time, there was music that didn't pretend everything was okay. It embraced the darkness. And Ozzy became the face of that movement. But while the band was changing the world, things behind the scenes were starting to fall apart. Fame came fast. Too fast. And with it, came excess. Alcohol. Drugs. Endless touring. The lifestyle that so many rock stars fall into. Ozzy dove into head first. What started as celebration slowly turned into dependence. And over time, it began to affect everything. Performances. Relationships. The band itself. By the late 70s, the tension had reached a breaking point. And then, it happened. Ozzy Osbourne, founder, frontman, icon, was fired from Black Sabbath. Just like that. The voice that helped create heavy metal was suddenly out of the band that defined it. And for a moment, It looked like the story was over. Being fired from Black Sabbath should have been the end. For most artists, it would have been. Ozzy didn't just lose his band, he lost his identity. For months, he spiraled. Drinking. Isolating. Completely lost. The industry had already moved on. And honestly, a lot of people thought he was done. But this is where the story takes a turn. Because someone refused to give up on him. Sharon Osbourne. She saw something in Ozzy that nobody else could at that point. Not just potential, but unfinished business. She stepped in, took control, and pushed him to rebuild. Not as a former frontman, but as a solo artist. And then came Randy Rhoads. Young. Brilliant. A guitarist who didn't just play, he elevated everything around him. Together, they created something explosive. Something fresh. Something nobody expected. Blizzard of Oz. From the very first note of Crazy Train, it was clear, Ozzy wasn't just back. He was better. Sharper. Hungrier. The song became an anthem almost instantly. And the album? A massive success. It shocked everyone. The critics who wrote him off. The fans who thought he was gone. Even the industry that had moved on without him. Ozzy Osbourne had done the impossible. He reinvented himself. But just as everything was falling into place, tragedy struck again. Randy Rhoads died in a sudden accident in 1982. And once again, Ozzy was faced with a moment that could have ended everything. But somehow, he kept going. There are rock stars, and then there are legends. And Ozzy Osbourne crossed that line in the most unexpected ways. Because let's be honest, his legacy isn't just built on music. It's built on moments. Moments that shocked the world. Moments that made headlines. Moments that turned him into something almost mythical. The bat incident. You've heard it. Everyone has. On stage, in front of a crowd, Ozzy bit the head off what he thought was a rubber bat. But it wasn't. It was real. And instantly, the story spread everywhere. It was wild. Disturbing. Completely unbelievable. And yet, it became part of his identity. The Prince of Darkness. But here's what made it different. Ozzy wasn't trying to create a persona. He wasn't playing a character. He was just being Ozzy. Unpredictable. Unfiltered. Completely in the moment. And that's what people connected with. Because in a world full of carefully crafted images, Ozzy felt real. Even when things went too far. Even when the headlines turned negative. Even when people questioned everything. He never became fake. And somehow, that chaos turned into something powerful. A legend that couldn't be ignored. By the early 2000s, Ozzy had already lived multiple lifetimes in one career. But then, something happened that changed everything again. Reality TV. The Osbournes. It sounds strange, right? The Prince of Darkness, on a family show? But that's exactly what made it work. Because for the first time, people saw Ozzy outside of the music. Not as this wild rock figure, but as a husband. A father. A guy trying to figure out everyday life. And it was hilarious. Confused. Chaotic. Completely unfiltered. But also, human. It introduced him to a whole new generation. Kids who had never heard Black Sabbath. Teenagers who didn't grow up with Crazy Train. Suddenly, they knew Ozzy as this lovable, unpredictable personality. And just like that, he reinvented himself again. Not just as a rock star, but as a cultural icon. So why does Ozzy Osbourne still matter? After everything, the chaos, the controversies, the decades in the spotlight, why is his legacy still so strong? Because it's not just about the music. It's about what he represents. Survival. Reinvention. Being completely yourself, even when the world doesn't understand you. Ozzy's story isn't perfect. It's messy. Complicated. Sometimes even hard to watch. But that's exactly why it resonates. Because it's real. He didn't follow a straight path. He didn't play it safe. He didn't fit into anyone's expectations. And yet, he became one of the most influential figures in music history. From Black Sabbath to his solo career, from controversy to comedy, from darkness to something almost inspiring. Ozzy Osbourne built a legacy that refuses to fade. To be why the time most artists slow down. Ozzy Osbourne had already lived several lifetimes. But there was one thing he couldn't outrun forever. Time. Years of touring. Years of physical strain. Years of pushing his body beyond its limits. It all started to catch up with him. And for the first time, the conversation around Ozzy began to shift. Not about controversy. Not about wild stories. But about his health. In the late 2010s, things became more serious. A fall in his home. A series of surgeries. Lingering pain that didn't just go away. Then came the diagnosis, Parkinson's disease. For fans, it was hard to hear. Because Ozzy had always felt untouchable. Like no matter what happened, he'd find a way through it. And in a way, he still did. Because even as his body struggled, his spirit didn't. He kept recording, kept showing up, kept pushing forward in ways that most people wouldn't even attempt. And that's what made this chapter different. It wasn't about proving critics wrong anymore. It wasn't about shocking the world. It was about resilience. About refusing to fade quietly. You could see it in his performances. More emotional, more raw. Every appearance carried weight. Every moment felt earned. And fans responded. Not just with excitement, but with respect. Because now, it wasn't just about what Ozzy had done. It was about what he was still doing. And even as things got harder, one thing became clear. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't done yet. When Ozzy announced what many believed would be his final tour, it felt like the end of an era. Farewell. It's a word that hits differently when it comes from someone like him. Because Ozzy was never supposed to last this long in the first place. And now, here he was, saying goodbye on his own terms. But even that didn't go as planned. Tour dates were postponed. Health setbacks made things uncertain. And fans around the world were left wondering, would they get one last chance to see him live? But here's the thing about Ozzy Osbourne. Nothing in his story has ever followed a straight line. Even when things seemed final, they rarely were. Because Ozzy isn't just an artist. He's a fighter. And whether it's through new music, surprise appearances, or simply the way his influence continues to shape the next generation, his presence hasn't disappeared. Not even close. In fact, in some ways, it feels bigger than ever. Because now, every moment carries meaning. Every appearance feels like history unfolding in real time. And fans aren't just watching a performance anymore. They're witnessing a legacy. One that refuses to end quietly. Here's something most people don't fully realize. Ozzy Osbourne didn't just influence music. He changed culture. Think about it. Before Ozzy, heavy music wasn't mainstream. It wasn't accepted. It lived on the edges. But over time, that changed. And a big part of that shift came from him. He made darkness accessible. Not in a watered-down way, but in a way that people could connect with. And beyond that, he redefined what it meant to be a rock star. Not perfect. Not polished. Not predictable. But real. And that authenticity, it carried over into everything. Reality TV. Interviews. Public appearances. Even his mistakes, they all became part of the story. And in a strange way, that made him more relatable. Because people didn't just see the legend. They saw the person. Flawed. Honest. Still standing. And that's rare. In an industry built on image. Ozzy Osbourne built his legacy on truth. Even when it was messy. Even when it didn't make sense. And maybe that's why his impact feels different. Because it didn't just change how music sounded. It changed how it felt. At some point, every legend becomes history. Their music lives on. Their story gets told. And eventually, they fade into memory. But Ozzy Osbourne, he doesn't feel like history. He feels ongoing. Because his influence didn't stop with his era. It didn't stay in the past. It keeps evolving. New artists still study his work. Still draw from his energy. Still try to capture that same raw, unpredictable presence that made him who he is. And fans, they don't just listen to Ozzy. They connect with him. With the ups. With the chaos. With the survival. Because at the end of the day, That's what his story is really about. Not perfection, not even success, but persistence. The ability to keep going, no matter how many times things fall apart. And maybe that's why his legacy feels so powerful. Because it's not just something you watch from a distance. It's something you recognize. In struggle, in resilience, in the fight to keep moving forward. And that's why, no matter what happens next, Ozzy Osbourne's story will never truly end. Ozzy Osbourne didn't just live a rock star life, he rewrote what that life could be. Through chaos, loss, reinvention, and survival, he built something that goes far beyond music. A legacy that refuses to fade. And maybe that's the real story here. Not the headlines, not the myths, but the fact that against all odds, he kept going. And in doing that, he became something rare. Not just a legend, but a symbol. If this story hit you, drop a comment, share your favorite Ozzy moment, and don't forget to subscribe. Because here, legends live forever. And before we come to the end of this video, I just want to take a moment to say a very big thank you to all of you for watching. Your time truly means a lot. In a world where there are thousands of videos you could be watching right now, the fact that you chose to spend a few minutes here with me on Hajararama TV is something I truly appreciate. This channel continues to grow because of viewers like you. Every view, every comment, and every bit of support helps this community become stronger. And that's what makes creating these videos so rewarding. If you enjoyed this video, please take a quick moment to like the video, leave a comment below, and share it with your friends or anyone who might enjoy this content. Your interaction really helps the channel reach more people who love stories, entertainment, and updates just like you do. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Hajararama TV, and turn on the notification bell so you'll always be among the first to know when a new video is uploaded. There are many more exciting videos coming your way very soon, and I would love for you to be part of this journey as the channel continues to grow. I also enjoy hearing your thoughts, so feel free to drop your opinions, ideas, or suggestions in the comment section. Your voice matters here, and your feedback helps make Hajararama TV even better. Once again, thank you so much for watching and for being part of this amazing community. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, stay entertained, and keep watching Hajararama TV.